Mr. Moore, you were born in 1932 in Tennessee to a musical family.
Yes.
Could you tell us what kind of music you were listening to when you were growing up, in your teens, for example?
Well, there was a big gap between me and my oldest brother, about 14 years. And I had 3 brothers and a sister that died at a very young age. But there was about 14 years between me and the first one up the line. And by the time I got big enough to be interested in music, everybody thought I was married, my dad got old, didn't care, and it was just hard-headedness, I guess, that I wanted to play. And I can just barely remember them playing a little bit around home, square dances and such. And they played mostly country music at that time.
And how did you learn to play the guitar?
Just by ear. Nothing, no lessons or anything. Just picked it up by ear.
You went to Korea?
Korea and China. I went in the Navy for 3 years and I was caught up in the extension for 1 year. And but you grow up real fast in the service.
What type of music were you listening to in the Army back in the early 50s?
Oh no, in the Navy.
Sorry, yes, in the Navy.
I was listening to all kinds of music then. And just, well, there wasn't any, no preference at all. Just music anything was fine with me, you know.
At that time in the South, the music scene was terribly segregated.
Yeah, right.
Did that affect you in your choice of music?
No, I mean, the people that I knew listened to all kinds of music. And
do you remember your first meeting with Elvis Presley and Bill Black? How did that come about?
Well, I had, when I came out of the Navy and moved to Memphis, I had formed a group called the Starlight Wranglers, and Doug Poindexter was the singer, and we did one record with Sam Phillips at Sun, and probably sold a dozen records maybe. But anyway, Sam and I became good friends during that process. And every day when he would get through, I'd go by his studio, and if he wasn't busy, we'd go next door to Miss Taylor's restaurant and have coffee and just talk about music in general. You know, what could be a hit, etc. And Marion Keisker was his secretary, and she brought up Elvis's name, but didn't call his name. She just said, that boy that was in here about a year before, and you wanted me to keep his name on file, that we might call him someday. And he said, how about him? And he said, yeah, maybe that might be okay, you know, something like that. And so over the next 2 weeks, every day that I saw him, I'd ask him, did you call that guy yet? You know, and he said, no. And again, we were having coffee. And he turned to Marion and said, go get his telephone number and give it to Scotty. And she did. She came back and gave me his telephone number, and I looked at it and I said, Elvis Presley? What kind of name is that? You know. And so he asked me to call him and have him come over to my house and see what I thought about it. Which I did. I went home and I called him and asked him to come over the next day, which was Sunday, the 3rd of July, I guess. And no, it'd have been the 4th, wouldn't it? Yeah. And Bill Black lived just a few doors from me at the time. He came down during this period, and listen to him also. And anything I could remember or name, he seemed he knew at least part of it. If he couldn't play it on a guitar, well, he'd quit playing and just sing it, you know. And Bill liked his singing. They said, well, you know what? Said he sings good. He knows a lot of songs. Because really, at that time, I wasn't looking for a record, but I was looking to pick up somebody that I could add another singer to the group that I had playing, and in the process, maybe get some record dates from Sam at the same time, because he was looking. We were all looking. And when Elvis left, I called Sam and relayed all of this to him. And he said, well, I'll call him and ask him to come in tomorrow night. And said, just you and Bill come in. He said, I don't need the whole band, because remember I had the Starlight Wranglers, I had a full band. But he said, just you and Bill come in. I said, I just want to hear a little music behind him and see what his voice sounds like. Tape was relatively new at that time. And well, Elvis had been going in there and cutting demos, but they were all on acetate, and which didn't sound as good as tape did. And that's how that part of it came about. So he called him and asked him to come in the next night. And Bill and I met over there at the studio, and we again played every song anybody could think of. Some of the things that Sam had already recorded on other people, and just whatever could named, you know. And Bill and I were just about ready to go home. It was late at night, and the door was open to the control room. And Elvis just stood up and started playing "That's All Right, Mama," just out of the blue. And Sam heard it, and he came to the door and stuck his head around. He said, "What was that you guys were doing?" I said, "That sounded pretty good." And we were just jamming, you know. And he said, "Well, jam a little bit more, and let me get it on tape." Because you have to remember, he was still just looking for a singer. And so Bill and I would discuss the song. Neither one of us had heard it before, because it was Sam had recorded it, of course. And so we discussed it a little bit. Well, we played what to play, so what key and all that good stuff. And we didn't do too many takes. There was maybe 4 or 5 takes, and that was it. And Sam came out and played the song, and I remember Bill said, "I don't know what it is, so they're liable to run us out of town," because it was so different, you know, and it was just the way we felt it. And that was the beginning of the whole thing.
What kind of a young man was he? Was he a rebel? Was he shy? Was he full of spunk?
Oh, Elvis was very shy. He wore a lot of lively clothing that he was picking up at Lansky Brothers, Beale Street, which was predominantly black clientele. And what was the movie? Blackboard Jungle was out at time, and he started wearing a ducktail haircut, you know, and that was his style. He was still a little different from everybody around him, you know.
But when you listen to "That's All Right, Mama," you have that incredible sound right from the very beginning. It's a sound that's crystalline and sharp, with killer riffs. Where did it actually come from?
It's just what we all felt at the time, you know. And I did a lot of things I can't go back and do. Just pulled them out of thin air, I believe.
After you recorded "That's All Right, Mama," you taped other songs. Did you participate in the choice of songs recorded with Elvis at Sun?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Well, let me back up a little. When after we did "That's All Right," or before we did "That's All Right," we had been singing. Elvis had been singing different songs, and I'm trying to think. Blue Moon. There was a couple of others that Sam kept on tape from the very beginning. And after we cut That's All Right Mama, we still went through the same process. We tried different songs, but he didn't keep any of these. And I'm glad he's sorry he didn't, because he sold those very, very early things to RCA when he sold his contract.
Do you remember the atmosphere of the sessions, the mood you were in? Did you play all night long?
Oh, no. No, sometimes, well, just like anything else, sometimes it would go longer than other times. It's usually finding the song that would fit him, and we knew it or we'd learn it, whatever. But it would take longer than a written session would, you know.
How did you find your riffs? Because there are some great riffs that you invented.
It's a good question. I don't know. just what I felt, and I always tried to play something that I felt like would fit the particular song, not just a bunch of notes. And that's the best way I can describe it. I mean, anybody can sit down and the singer could sing a song, and you just play some notes. And call that the instrumental break. But I didn't like that. I liked something that would say something about the music also. I guess that would be the way I would explain it.
Was it connected with a special type of guitar, Fender or Gibson?
Well, I was playing. I had just bought a Gibson L5. Not L5, 295, I'm sorry. And it was a hollow body, but you could have done the same thing, I guess, on any kind at the time.
Were you conscious that you were leading a revolution in the history of music?
Lord, no.
No.
No. We all enjoyed what we were doing. And we were hoping that Bill had a day job, and so did I. We was just hoping it would catch on enough that we could quit our jobs and just play music.
Yes.
Which did happen, of course. But
is it true you once said it was lunch money in the beginning?
Yeah, true. That's true.
Did you listen to other rock and rollers like Chuck Berry or Fats Domino?
Oh, yes. Right, yeah.
With a feeling of competition or camaraderie?
Oh, no. Not competition, just when we would do a show, if Elvis wanted to do a Chuck Berry song or Little Richard, or we'd just go out and try to do it the best way. He wasn't trying to outdo somebody else, that had recorded it before. He didn't have any songs at the time, so we set up probably more at night trying to figure out some other songs to be able to play a date,
And then came what they called Elvis Mania. You were on stage, you were on tour during the Elvis Mania. Do you remember that as something pleasant, something crazy, or something unbelievable? What was it like for you during that period?
Well, I usually ended up, when it was just the three of us, we'd send Elvis out to sign autographs, which he would sit on the edge of the stage if it was with a concert where there was a stage, and he'd stay there till morning. He loved people and loved to work with them. And I would end up packing the car, and Bill would be out selling Elvis's picture. And when the crowd started to diminish, that's when we'd ease out and take off, because we'd have to go to the next town that same night, just about always.
How did you tour at the time? Did you use a bus, a car?
My wife at the time had traded her car, which was a Chevrolet, traded it on a 54 Bel Air Chevrolet for us to use. And that's what we hit the road in.
You were a group of young white people,
right,
mixing the styles
right,
of white country and black rhythm and blues. How was that taken, especially in the south of the United States?
It was a mixed bag. It was mostly younger people loved it, and some of the diehard Southerners didn't like it, of course. I mean, we kind of expected that. And
your act was rather scandalous. It was provocative, sexy. It stirred up many households.
Anything new gets that, don't they? Anything new and then it's different. It was different. And
do you remember the craziness, the reaction of the crowds when you were on stage?
Oh yeah, I remember a lot of them, but Elvis's antics and stuff that he did on stage was done. It was fun to him to see the girls and guys too go crazy about what he was doing. And he actually, it's another those small story I'll tell you, that the first actual concert we did before an audience was Overton Park Shell in Memphis, and they had Slim Whitman was the headliner of the show, and Sam managed to get us on the show as an added attraction. And guitar players usually either stand flat-footed and play, or maybe pat a foot. Well, Elvis, when he would play the guitar, he would raise up on the bottles of his feet. Now, if you remember how big the pants were back then, those zoots and whatever, and when he raised up on his toes of his feet and start playing, well, he looked like he had another person in his pants, you know. And that's where it all started. And he was a quick learner. And when he seen that the girls liked it, well, that's where all his dancing came from.
Did you improvise when you were playing with Elvis? Or were the concerts always planned in advance?
No, we had a set list as far as, we knew exactly what we were going to do. We might improvise some on, or I would at least, in playing the song, as far as the guitar instrumental or so. But we always knew what we were going to play, and had a set list made out before we played. Now we only did 15 minutes, and then we got to 20, then 25, and then 30, and so on.
Would it be accurate to say that in the band you were the spin doctor or the strong man? Or as Elvis used to say, the old man keeping it together, structuring things? Would that be accurate?
Well, that's true. Elvis always started calling me the old man. It was mainly I had been in the service and I was regimented. I had... all our instruments had to be in the car a certain way, and clothes and so forth. And that's where that came from. And that was a joke for him. Somebody asked him something, he said, well, ask the old man or something.
A sort of big brother?
Well, we were like brothers, really.
You were like brothers?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember the days with Elvis and Bill and DJ? The fun, the jokes, the conversations?
I remember some, yes, but most times we were always just jovial. And the one thing I do remember very much is that when there was just the three of us traveling in the car, when we'd finish a show, it was usually Bill would we'd go leave the show and go to a restaurant somewhere and get a hamburger or what have you, and Bill would walk Elvis down the road. He'd go on down the road for a while, and I wouldn't go immediately. Bill would walk him till he got tired, so he'd go to sleep because we couldn't get any sleep. He was that hyper at that time.
What were some of the changes you noticed as the group became increasingly popular, first in Tennessee, then throughout the USA? in 55, 56, 57?
Well, the biggest thing for me was just the crowds got bigger, and it was harder to hear on stage and didn't have all the amplification as you have now and those kind of things. And that was, I guess, the biggest change that I felt and saw.
There must have been tremendous pressure with the press, with TV shows, etc.
Well, there's a lot. Yes, there was a lot of pressure, but it was expected. I mean,
what is your favorite Elvis song?
It always been my favorite was "Don't," and I only just played a little rhythm on it. It's just I like the way it hit singing on it.
And I think the last song you recorded with him was "Mystery Train."
And I had just gotten my Echo amplifier at that time also, because I was trying. I was when we go out and do a show where Sam was using this, well, we called it slapback then, but the echo in his voice, it always sounds so dry and empty. And I ran across this amplifier and I bought it so that at least it would have some semblance of the record when we played. At least the guitar part would.
Some people say it's a sort of signature song.
It did, but Mr. Train did become my signature, right.
Heartbreak Hotel remains the reference for rock and roll fans and guitar players worldwide. What was your intention when you strummed those first riffs?
There again, I didn't hear there again, back to notes. I didn't hear a bunch of notes being played. The song starts with just his voice, and I think the drums are not even playing at the front end of it, and everything is very quiet. Chet Atkins played rhythm guitar on that recording. Well, that was the first thing we recorded when we went to RCA, Victor. And we didn't have a director on the sessions. We started having some when he started doing movies. We'd have to do songs a certain way, and some of these silly songs they didn't want to do anyway. You can tell it by listening to them. But when we'd go in on a recording session, the A&R man, Steve Scholes for RCA, they would bring in a stack of potential records, and Elvis would come in and sit down and he'd start playing them, and he had a stack here, maybe, and another stack over here, and then a third, that kind of deal. And we'd go out and drink coffee or something while he was doing that, and come back, and when he started it on the maybe set, then we'd start learning the tune and what would be good. And even then, he might work on a song for a little bit and still say, no, that's not going to do it, and throw that one away, and we'd go to something else. But to me, the singer is the most important thing first. And once he found it and learned it the way he wanted to do, and the key and everything, then we would try to learn it and join in.
You also became his manager, his first manager.
I was the manager for a year. That happened. There was 2 or 3 people in Memphis. I guess you would call them managers or booking agents or whatever. When he started hitting, they started calling him and wanting to do different things. And we were discussing it at the studio one day, and it was actually Sam's idea. Elvis said, well, I don't know what to tell these guys or whatever, and Sam said, I'll tell you what, so why don't you sign a contract with Scotty for a year, and that'll give us time to get out and meet people and find somebody that we all trust and everything like that. And we knew Bob Neal at the time, and he had booked us on several shows, and we all liked him, and he was a fine man. And so there was no problem in switching over, because I was interested in playing more than anything. I did a lot of booking on small clubs, but that was my cup of tea.
Then, of course, there was a split. Many people think that Elvis changed when the group disbanded. Do you remember that period around 1959 with the arrival of Colonel Parker and...
Well, Tom Parker never had any use for the band. He was also booking Hank Snow at the time, and he tried to get Snow's band. He wanted them to back Elvis and do away with us, and Elvis wouldn't have anything to do with it. That was the first thing with him, and he did a lot of things good for Elvis, and he did a lot of bad things too.
What do you think of the music that Elvis Presley did in the early 1960s for the movies, for Hollywood?
Some of it was good, and some of it was terrible. I mean, you read those stories where they said he would stay in the studio till daylight singing gospel songs with the quartet. He just happened to psych himself up to do some of this stuff, but the money was good. It's that kind of deal.
What were your feelings? You were at the heart of this new sound, the soul of rock and roll.
Well, it just kind of went with the flow, I guess. Yeah. About all you could do.
Then there was an important event, the '68 Comeback Special.
Right.
That was a great TV show, one of the greatest shows in my opinion. You were reunited on stage with Elvis. Do you remember anything about the circumstances of that particular recording?
Well, it was just the portion that we did. He had a couple of his buddies were on stage with us, and I guess what I remember most of all, we played That's All Right, I think, and then neither one of us had a guitar strap, because we were supposed to be sitting down, because it's in the round table. And so the next thing that happens, he wants to borrow my guitar. He takes my guitar, gives me his, then he stands up, puts his foot on the stool, and so he could hear better. And I didn't have a guitar strap, so he had to stand up and do that.
From the looks of the show, the flame was certainly still alive. One wonders why you didn't go back on the road together after that.
I think it was mostly, Parker had signed a lot of contracts for movies that he was supposed to do. And when DJ Fontana, the drummer, we went out and did the comeback special. Elvis called the two of us. We went and had dinner with him at his house, and he called us back in another room, which he never did. Usually, anything he wanted to say, he'd say it to nobody who was around. And he asked us if we would like to do a European tour, and we told him, sure. I had a studio at the time, and I said, sure. I said, but give me a little notice so I can, straighten things out at the studio. And he said, okay. And that never happened. The next thing, that's when he went into Vegas. And of course, we know why.
So that was the last time you saw him?
That was the last time I saw him, at that particular time.
Through the years, you have received tributes from people, sometimes some of the world's greatest guitarists, like Eric Clapton, Bill Wyman, Alvin Lee, Jeff Beck, Keith Richards, Jimmy Page, and many others. Do you think you are the godfather of rock guitar?
Sometimes I feel like the godfather. I'll be 73 this month.
And the guitarists who influenced you, did you listen to Merle Travis, for example?
Oh, yes, him. I listened to a lot of jazz. I was into jazz back then. As far as listening, I never could play it the way some of these people did, but I love the Chet Atkins and Merle Travis. I'm a good friend with Merle's son. His name Tom Bresh, and he plays everything his daddy ever played and twice as good and probably better. It's fantastic.
What do you think, how do you react when someone imitates you?
Well, if they don't do it right, if I'm there, I'll stop off and show them.
So keep on rocking.
Keep on rocking.